what are we going to talk about? Because you are working on a new application, and as I understand it, you just started like what, a week and a half ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some things that you may want to consider when you're doing your designing, or when you're coding your application. I understand you've been split up into teams of 4. So here's my deal with you. If at any time I've been told I talk a little bit fast, ja anteeksi, opiskelen suomea. So my Finnish is not as good as it should be. But if at any time you have a question, go ahead and interrupt me. Go ahead and hit your, unmute your mic. Just say, hey, Tiki, hold on a second. And go ahead and ask your question. Deal? I'm going to assume you folks said it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there obviously is a lot more topics, but these are the most common ones that people tend to forget when we're going through when they're going through building a new app. Okay, so the areas we're going to cover today is purpose and requirements. Obviously, this comes in when the clients give you what they want, and then here's something that a lot of people don't think enough about, and that's the UX design, the user experience. You might be wondering, wait, Tiki, hold on a second. Isn't it supposed to be UX UI? Well, the UI is, yes, it's part of the experience, but the experience that you want your customers or your users to have is important. Then we're going to talk about tech stack and how you can choose what kind of tech stack you're doing and how to kind of plan things. Then we're going to talk a little bit about architecture and how we want to plan the software, how we want to distribute it, and it's all based on what we gathered in the first 2 parts, which is the purpose, requirements, and the UX design. Then some tips, and this one, when you start working, your colleagues will thank you greatly if you just do a few things regarding your documentation. And then we'll talk about a little something, legal issues, because especially here in Europe, because we are bound by EU laws, we have to talk about things like GDPR and what's legal and what's ethical. So these are things that you have to basically put through into your application design. So let's begin. Any questions so far? No? Okay, moving along. So first part is purpose and requirements. And this is essentially where you will find out from your clients what they're trying to build. Okay. Now, within your team, you should have 1 or 2 people as product owners or product managers. Now, the reason why you might want to have this, because this person or these people will have to iteratively, as you're building your app, they will have to constantly contact or be in contact with a representative of your client. Their job is it seems simple, but it's very, very, very important. And that is to constantly ask the client, hey, what would you like built? You wanted this feature. Do you want it done this way? Or do you want it done that way? So they have to basically bring the client's vision to the team. And what they do is they create tickets for their Scrum board or their, I'm not quite sure what you're using for your project. I mean, usually when I'm working for an employer, they will use something like Azure DevOps or Jira or even Trello. So Trello, I'm not sure about Jira, but Trello I know is free. So as you're doing this project, at your own cost, I would imagine if you're using a board, something like Trello. And essentially, the product owner's job is to basically put what's the word for it? Put tickets onto the board, and the developers will basically take the tickets from the board and start working on them. And if they have any questions, sorry, was that somebody's hand up?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I heard a beep, and I can't see anything except for this screen right now. So anyway, um, so you have your tickets over here, and then you will basically put it into as you work on them put them into progress. And anytime a team member has a question about how something should be developed, they would be asking the product owner. Now, this is very much Scrum process, and if you want, we can actually talk about the whole Scrum process and what it entails and what it's trying to do, what a sprint is, how to conduct dailies, and all that good stuff if you are interested. And that is essentially a very common way on how teams work nowadays. So uh, I will come more on that if you have any questions about it. Anywho, so that's essentially what you want to do in this phase when you're gathering information. And like I said, you'll be doing this iteratively throughout the entire production life cycle. Okay? Okay, moving along. Um, Seem to have, there you go. Here's where we come to the UX design part. Now, this is supremely important because we have to ask the tough questions, and this will determine how you write your code or how you implement your app. So we ask the usual questions, the 6 questions. Who are the users? What do they need to do? How will they interact? Why are they interacting? When will it be, when will they be using it? Where are they located? Let's start with the first one. Who are the users? Now, this is very important, and what I would suggest is you bring up like a spreadsheet or something like that, where you can ask, who are the types of users that we have? We have an admin user, we have the regular users, or if the app that you're using has requirements for multiple types of users. There's a regular user, a professional user, a super special user, and they're paying a different subscription and they need to do different things, right? You need to write down those roles because later on, when it comes to the architecture, I'll explain why. Okay, so these are your user profiles. What do they need? What do they need to be able to do? Uh, and here's something that even experienced developers forget to do this, but your users are not just the users who are, using your system, not just from the client side, but even on your side, your testers. These are people who are usually very much forgotten when it comes time to, is the system intended for a tester to test the system? Answer is usually no. And even your tech support. And the reason why users, I put testers and support as 2 separate categories is because support, your tech support, when your users call up and say, hey, I can't seem to log in. I don't know what this is. It's your support people that have to uh, support the users. So you need to be able to give them functionality to do things like, reset passwords and things like that. And here's the thing that you have to remember. Your support people are not usually from within the same company. And you have to be able to make your support system uh, accessible by third parties, because a lot of times these larger companies especially, what they will do is they will subcontract their support to another company in the most commonplace, a lot of call centers are in Asia, so like in India or Malaysia or Singapore or whatever. So you need to be able to give them, sorry, there's a bug flying over here. You need to be able to give these support people the tools that they need to support your app. So these are your users. These are the most common types of users. Now, here's the thing. What do they need to do? So this is where your UI design comes to. So for example, I know especially if you're doing an app for the first time, you see something that's a cool feature. It's like, oh yeah, if I have this, if I move my mouse over this, it will come up with an autocomplete for whatever the user is typing. Or if I click on this button, it will pull up a map. It's really cool. It looks cool. It's nicely animated and everything. But is it necessary? Okay. Because, like, for example, let's say you have a form, right? And the user is supposed to be able to, I'll give you an example from my past, which is essentially I was working on an ERP, enterprise resource planning software for a company called Mytech. And one of the features was land development. So basically, our clients are land developers. So they would basically buy land from the city or the county, and they would subdivide it and build houses on it. So anytime they bought land, they had to negotiate like a bond with the city so that, they don't mess up the land or they don't dirty the waterways or litter stuff all over the place. So whoever was entering the land permit had to keep track of, how much the payments were made for that bond. So they wanted to, on the same screen, they want to have the contract and also the list of payments that were already made, the schedule of payments, and when the next payments will be done. So they want to see on one screen the payments that were done and the others that are still scheduled but not paid yet. So this is a consideration. So now okay, I need to have some kind of a tab over here that has maybe the payments highlighted in black for the ones that are not paid yet, and the ones that are still gray for the ones that are upcoming. And if a payment was not made, maybe highlight that one in red. So just to give you an example of what you need to think of when you're doing your UI design, what do they need to do? So this goes back to your previous step, which is gathering requirements. So your clients will tell you, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. And I know for your project, Ramble has already done that. So we'll actually go through that towards the end of this presentation. Now, the next thing you have to ask is, how are they going to interact? And this goes back to your user acceptance testing. That's the UAT that I mentioned over here. Now, I put JP Morgan over there is because JP Morgan was actually a client of mine before. And this was JP Morgan Hong Kong. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with JP Morgan. They are one of the largest banks in the world. And the unit that I was working with was their stock brokerage firm. And what they do is they have stock tickers, and they have to grab information from the New York Stock Exchange, from NASDAQ, from all the different stock exchanges around the world. And they have to present the prices for each stock, and it has to be done in real time. It cannot lag. So one of the UAT, one of the user acceptance test criteria was any transaction could not take more than 300 milliseconds. Otherwise, it would basically fail the test. Now, just to give you an example, 300 milliseconds may sound like a lot, but 1,000 milliseconds is just 1 second. Okay, so you had to basically, anytime a user clicked on a quote for a stock price or executed a buy or sell action, it needed to complete that action within 300 milliseconds. If that was not achieved, that feature would fail the user acceptance test. So these are the things that you also have to think about. So your clients will tell you, okay, I need to be able to store map sections. And these map sections are going to be used in some kind of profile that I need for each user. And it needs to be stored for 6 months, for example. So these are the things that you have to put into consideration when you're designing your software. How will they interact with it? Then the next question, This is a question that even seasoned developers will sometimes forget. Sometimes the clients will basically, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. It's up to you now, or rather, it's the architect's job to find out why they need to interact with it. Yes, the users can, take a look at other people who are logged in, but why do they need to? Because if they don't need that kind of information, that could be a security issue later on. So yes, as you're implementing all your features, and yes, you need to specify, okay, this user type A, admin user, needs to be able to create new users, edit users, uh, um, remove users. They need to be able to change passwords, modify profiles. Um, that's an admin user. But a regular user, do they need to modify profiles for everyone? No, only their own. Ah, okay. Do they need to see the list of all current users? Regular user? Maybe not, right? So this basically tells you why they are interacting with it. So anything that you decide a user should be able to do, somebody else in your team has to go, wait, um, is that really necessary? Because that could be a security issue if, and then you can have a discussion about that. Okay, so why are they interacting with a particular feature on your system? Okay, now the next one is we've done who, what, how, why, when. That's another question right here. When are they going to be interacting with it? Now, this actually is more for the benefit of in every team, there's a person who is basically the capacity manager. And this is extremely important, especially nowadays, because we're using cloud services. Yes, I know it's really fun if you have like unlimited budget and you can basically get an instance of a cloud, a cloud instance for a server that's like got 128 cores and unlimited, 4 to 8 terabytes worth of hard drive space just to begin with, redundancy all over the place. But the truth is that would be expensive. So cloud usage, this is actually very important because if you know how to do this really well, you can pretty much write your own paycheck because companies would pay you a lot because you would save them a lot. So when are your users going to be most active? Because, and this goes back to where are your, comes back to where your users are, who are your users? Are they using it only 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? That's when your peak periods are. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, where? Finland, US, Germany? Because if you can predict or rather analyze when your peak usage is, that's when you can adjust your cloud usage to say, okay, I only need more CPU usage during these hours. After that, you can drop it down and you would save so much money for your company and they would love you for it. Okay. So you need to be really good with capacity management and also with analytics. You have to basically see your past performance, every cloud service, whether it's AWS, Azure, Alibaba, cloud, no matter who you're using, they will always give you reports about when your usage is higher, when your usage is lower, and you can always see patterns over a year, over 10 years, over 5 years, that kind of thing. So get really good at reading those reports. Then we talk about where are they located. I just mentioned this. I just alluded to this just now. Um, are they located like, for example, when I was working for MyTech, a lot of our clients were in the US, in the UK, some in Asia, so and some in Europe. So the users basically needed to interact with it at different times. And so where do I place the server? Do I place it in one place? Or do I, in the case of our cloud services, we would have to split it up. because we would need an instance or a few instances in the US, a few here in Europe, some in Asia. So that way, when the user made a request, they didn't have to wait like, why is the page still loading? And things like that. Because our app was very graphics intensive. It had lots of graphs, a lot of maps to load, things like that. So we'd have to have different instances. And that also came up with the question, well, which server is seeing the most traffic? Because then maybe we need more instances. Then we talk about load balancing. If this server is constantly has like a million hits every hour on the hour, but this one is only like 50,000, 60,000. So obviously, I need more resources on this one. This one I can cut down the usage. So it goes back to capacity management again. So these are the questions, and these are 6 questions right here that most architects, most software architects, and whoever is designing the software, you will have to ask. See that I put these 2 arrows circling around the question mark, because at every step of the way, you have to keep asking these questions over and over again. So if, let's say, for example, you implement a new type of user. Let's say it's the manager type user. What is a manager type user supposed to do? They need to be able to manage profiles. They need to be able to manage submissions. They need to be able to manage, save the map sections. They need to be able to delete, modify, things like that. Then, how are they going to interact with it? Why do they need to interact with it? They need all the privileges, or is it just, read only, or is it read and write, or is it read, write, and execute, things like that. Okay, let's move along. Now, let's talk about the tech stack over here. Now, when we're talking about tech stack, there are 3 things that we have to talk about. Obviously, hardware, software, and underwear. I'm just kidding. There's no underwear. But here we're talking about your stack that you're talking that you want to bring forward, and we're talking about the front end, back end, database. These are the 3 main components. Of course, there are some other components here and there. Let's talk about the front end first. Now, if you take a look at the job listings that are currently available, I'd say about 90% of like web applications, front end, usually your choices are Angular or React. And the other 5% is going to probably be Vue.js or something like that. Now, before you start thinking, oh, Tiki, which one are you more in favor of, Angular or React? Here's the truth, folks. You have to know both. No choice about this. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. Like, for example, React is really good for rapid deployment. So if you need to get something up and running really fast and essentially be somewhat maintainable, React is your best choice. It is, you can develop it quickly. Your components can be up and running. You can do some very simple state management with it. But you have to remember, React is a library, not a framework. So like, for example, if you wanted to implement like state management for forms or state management, you need to use another library like, Redux or Formix or things like that. So again, pros and cons, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. Angular, you will notice larger projects, especially if you have really large employers, people like Berkshire Hathaway or even like Microsoft. They will tend to favor companies that have rather large ERP systems. They will tend to favor Angular. And the reason why is, yes, Angular is a whole framework. So that means you have everything in there. You don't need your a separate library for state management. It's already got RxJS in there. It's already got a HTTP client in there. It's all inclusive. You've got your, reactive forms, your template forms, template-based forms. So it's got all that already built in. But admittedly, it's a little bit large, cumbersome. You have to do a lot of setup. But because it's all inclusive, you don't have to worry about maintenance. It's easier to maintain an Angular application long term than it is for React. Now, for all you React fans, that's not true. Let me explain. And this happened to us. Again, in my previous jobs, we actually had a situation. Again, it's the same company that had that monolithic application that was 15 years old. And we had a React front end, and the React front end was using a library for drawing. Basically, the users could use it to draw on maps and PDF documents and things like that. So it had that feature, and we were using a third-party library in our React app. The problem was when it came time to upgrade some of the features, we wanted to add new features to it, or get some additional features in. That library that we were using was no longer supported. So we had to swap it out with something else. And that's where the problem came in. Now, if you're sure that the library that you're using for your React app is never going to expire, great, brilliant. You have no problems. But if you happen to be using a library that's might not be supported in the future, you'll have a problem there. So that's the pros and cons between React and Angular. Angular, a little bit more work to set up, a bit more work to code, but long term, easier to maintain because all the features are always backward compatible with previous versions, except for version 1. React, very quick to develop. It's just a library, so it's mainly just components. That's it. But if you want to add in like persistence or some API calls and things like that, you have to rely on third-party libraries. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so that's a bit about the front end. Back end, again, this is very much dependent on your client. Your client or your employer will tell you what you can and cannot do for your back end. Like for example, if they say, "Oh, we'd like to implement we'd like to keep ourselves a Microsoft house." Okay, fine, ASP.NET, great. But we have budget issues, budget constraints. Okay, maybe the instances will have to be lower. What's your monthly budget? Things like that. Or if the user says, "Hey, we're a startup, we have zero funding." Okay, that usually means I'll have to go with a Linux kind of environment. So then what kind of backend can I have? Well, then you're relegated to things like Java or Node.js or Python. These are the things that are free. And also, they're usually the what's the word for it? Cloud solutions for hosting Linux systems are usually a lot, I shouldn't say a lot cheaper, but definitely cheaper than the Microsoft versions. And then from the backend, you also have to decide on your database. What kind of database are you going to use? There are currently only two kinds. There's either SQL or non-SQL. Both pros and cons. Like for example, if you're using like Oracle, you can support like millions and millions of concurrent connections and concurrent requests. So supremely well developed. It's been proven with performance and not on the cheap side. That's Oracle. Microsoft is kind of like in the middle if you're using Microsoft SQL. If you want to use something that's more free, you have MySQL or even PostgreSQL. Or if you're doing like non-SQL solutions, you can use MongoDB, which is essentially a whole collection of JSON objects. It's absolutely brilliant. And I find, this is me personally, if you're having to deal with machines that have limited, they're not like desktops that have a lot of capacity for performance. If you're using like a hand phone, depending on the type of hand phone, but most hand phones are not like top of the line. So you need to keep your data packet small. I would usually opt for non-SQL databases. But that's just me. That's just a little rule that I have. Some people may disagree with that. Any questions about, how you decide on what tech stack you have? Nope. Okay, moving along. Then we talk about the architecture. And here, I'm going to go back to what I mentioned just now, the front end, back end, and database. Because when you're designing the architecture, you should do it from the back to the front. I know a lot of people go, wait, shouldn't we basically be doing the front end first? That way we know what APIs to develop. Well, here's the thing. If you design it properly, if you ask the proper questions, you can actually, as Pavel mentioned just now, you can eliminate a lot of bugs if you do it correctly. And you should spend most of your time, I should say about 80% of your time should be spent on your database design. Because this is where you will decide what, what's the word for it? What tables you will need, how those tables will interact with each other. So for example, let's say let's talk about user management. So I have a table for all the users, the user's name, username, password. And then in my requirements, my client has said that a user can be, a tester is also a user. A customer is a user. So I know that if the customer is a user, and the customer users need to be able to access all the main features of this app, right? But the support users need to also access administrative functions of this app. Now, so a user can be either a customer, and the customers can basically, let's say we're building a training management app. Okay, let's say the users are building a training management app. So the training management app, users can post a course. They can modify a course. They can attend a course. They can modify their attendance. They can modify the dates of the course. So they need to be able to access different functionality. Can I put everything on one table? This question is to those of you who are familiar with database tables, how to create columns for those tables. So I'll repeat my question again. If a user needs to be able to do multiple things and not all users will have the same things, can I put all the users' functionality, all their features, all their information on just one table, the users table?
You can shout your answer. Maybe you can shout your answer. Just give it a try.
Yeah, no, don't worry. This is not an exam. It's not going to be in the final. It doesn't count towards your GPA.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Put it in the chat if you are shy.
No.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's actually a very good answer. Even if you said yes, it's also an acceptable answer. Do you know why? Because if your table, for table columns, there's one type of column. I'm talking about SQL tables, of course. There's a column type you can use as enum. Enum basically means you can just add a type to it. But the problem is enum can only be one value. So you can't use an enum. And in fact, I'm going to show you something. This is something I was experimenting with, and this is also something that I'm going to come to in just a moment. I'm sure you've all already seen ChatGPT, and I'm sure you've already tried to use it. Now, ChatGPT is a great tool, but the problem with ChatGPT is it will basically give you a very basic design. So I asked it to do this. Hold on a second. Yeah. Nuts. Did I just? Oh, Nelly.
What?
Ah, there you go. Okay. Here you go. So, like for example, I was basically asking ChatGPT, right? Because I was building the user tables, and it gave me this. So reviews, trainer. Yeah, there you go. So on the roles, it basically gave me an enum, which, and this is where you will need to be able to be. What was I saying just now? Oh yeah, ChatGPT or any AI, they're great tools and they can help you a lot in your coding. But that does not mean that, oh, I don't need to know how to code anymore. Unfortunately, that's not true. AI has not developed to that point yet. You still need to know how to code. You still need to know how architecture works, because this is the example right here. It said that the users have an enum, and enum can only have one type of value. Whereas I needed the users to be able to do multiple things, as I mentioned to it here, right here. The roles are defined as an enum, which entails it can only have one value. So I have to tell the I have to tell the AI it's wrong, right? So it then redid the enums again. And the point is, you can actually have ChatGPT to help you with this. And then at the end of it, it can generate this for you. Hold on a second. Let me get this. Sorry. There. So you can actually have it generate your script for you, but you need to know how to code it. You need to know how to develop it. So yes, ChatGPT helps. No, it will not do the work for you. You still need to know how to do the work. Okay, so you can relax. The AI is not going to take over jobs, not in the near future at least. You still need to know how to do it. But if you know how to use the AI and you know how to use a code and you know how to code and you know how systems work, you can pretty much write your own paychecks. Okay, moving along. Where was I? Oh yeah, here we go. So, any questions thus far?
It's going very good.
Hyvä. Okay. Jatketaan. Right. Now, here's where this goes back to when we were talking about designing and how your architecture is. This is something that you may want to think of. Now, for your particular project right now, the one that was given to you by Ramble, you probably don't need this. It's pretty much just, front end, back end database. But later on, here's how you might want to work. And this is especially true if you're dealing with startups or very large corporations, okay? Because you want to basically design your application so that it can be used for large, it's scalable basically is what I'm trying to point out. You want to make sure that your software is scalable. How do you do that? Well, you may want to consider the way you design it as containers, little containers. So your app, your front end should be in different containers. Your back end should be in different containers. And they should have maybe access to one shared database or, replicated databases if you want to do multiple databases. But here's the thing. I want you to even break it down even more into different modules. So let's say, for example, we have the user management module. So the user management module, the front end is all for, creating a user profile, modifying a user profile, changing a password, logging in. Okay, so that's the user management. Oh, and authentication. Authentication and authorization. And that will be just one module. So let's pretend that's for, well, let's, based on that's on the screen right now, let's say that first front end is just for users. So the back end that you're writing only has endpoints for just logging in, modifying, deleting a user, modifying a user profile, right? So it's all just separated into just for users. Front end will be one container, back end will be one container. What the heck are containers, Tiki? For those of you who have never heard of it, it's called Docker, and I would love to go through what a Docker application would look like. You can have multiple instances of your front end, and one could be operating in the cloud on the European cloud, another one in the US cloud, another one in the Asian cloud, and they would all look the same. And when you modify one, it will automatically, it will redeploy, modify. So the look will be the same, the experience for the user will be the same, but the response would be supremely fast because you can distribute it. Same with the backend. Each backend is so specialized that it's only for user management. And then you have another front end and back end for the catalog, or whatever the main functionality of your app is. So the idea here is you want to break up your app into small little tiny chunks. And why do I say this? Remember that story I told you about the monolithic application that I told you about, the one that was built about 15 years ago? Well, see, anytime you want to add a feature, remove a feature, we had to overhaul the whole application just to add a feature because everything was all interconnected with one another. If you split it up like this, where user management is just one module, so that's one container, the backend is just one container, the front end is one container. If I need to change, like I want to, okay, for the login of the users, I want to add, you can log in using Google. You can use your Google account to log in. I only need to change one module. The rest are still remaining, they all still remain the same. Okay? So it makes your life long-term a lot easier. That's why a lot of startups prefer this kind of architecture. Larger companies, sorry, yes, go ahead.
May I make a comment? Because I also worked in a company which had a big ball of mud architecture, a monolithic architecture of over 6 million lines of codes of Fortran and other stuff included. And I highly recommend for any junior developer to seek positions with legacy codes and this kind of systems because they teach you so much, and then you really appreciate all these modern frameworks, which you think now that might not be so good, you really love them after that.
Oh, yes. That is very true. Yeah, like I said, even one of my previous employers, they had a monolithic code, not quite 6 million, about 2.5, maybe 3 million lines of code. But making any changes was just such a pain in the patukas, which is why when we were told to overhaul the system, this is the kind of architecture we were striving towards. Yeah. Okay, yes. So does everybody understand this so far? Yeah, okay. Okay, moving along. Then we talk about documentation. Now, I know this is something a lot of developers, like it's writing notes into some kind of knowledge base. Nowadays, there are tools that can actually write that knowledge base for you, but you still need to help your colleagues out. And this is the bare minimum, okay, folks? This is going to be the bare minimum. This is what I would like you all to do. And believe me, if you do this with your next employment or your next contract or whatever it is, the person, your dev lead or the manager or whoever, they are going to be so very impressed with you. Just do this one thing. Put comments on every single one of your functions, your classes. Okay? It's as simple as this. Just one thing. Because let's say you're working in a team, right? And when you work in a company, people come, people go, some people get newly hired, some people are resign or are fired, right? And somebody's got to continue the work. So it is supremely irritating when you take a look at a function and you're trying to decipher what that function is supposed to do. Now I know you're probably thinking, hey, Tiki, we're doing this project for our school, it's for a school project right now. Do we really need to write this? Get into the practice of doing it. Even if you are doing just a simple app, get used to the idea of adding comments on every single class, method, service, everything that you have. Put comments on them. What does it do? Okay, if it has parameters, what are the parameters supposed to be? What is it supposed to be returning? Okay, where is this return value coming from? That's what you want to put in this section right here, where you see where it says slash star, and then star slash. That's the start. That's the end. Okay, and this particular format that you see over here, slash star star. If you're using Visual Studio Code, the moment you put a slash star star, it will automatically go into this yeah, I'll show you. Hold on a second. Okay, so like for example, the moment, let's say I want to put a comment over here, right? So I go star slash slash. Oops, sorry, excuse me. Apologies. Moment you put a slash star star, it automatically goes into a JS doc comment. And these JS doc comments are very useful because there are tools that you can use to actually generate a knowledge base just based on this. So like, for example, this component is used, sorry, this is not a component, this service is used for retrieving JSON data from various sources. Okay, and then you can basically put like at author so they know who to look for. If somebody is looking for who the heck wrote this thing, oh, it's Tiki, no wonder it's so bad. So things like that. Questions about this? No? Okay. So that's basically what I wanted to do. And just by doing this one thing, you have already set yourself apart, because I know a lot of developers who are so lazy to do documentation. They won't even do this. Okay? So get used to the idea of putting documentation on everything, every method, and your colleagues will love you for it. Okay, moving along. Next thing we have to talk about is legal. Now, this one is just more of I'm going to touch on it. I am not a lawyer, but these are the things I was told to remember as I was building systems. Now, first thing is, there are two things that we have to talk about here: law and ethics. Law, you do something wrong, they can basically give you fines or put you in jail for it. That's law. Ethics. Ethics are, nobody's going to put you in jail for it, but people will kind of raise an eyebrow if you don't do or if you do certain things. For example, law. Here in Europe, we have something called the GDPR, or basically your General Data Protection Act. Okay, so you cannot like ask for people's emails, names, uh, dates of birth, things like this without their consent. So if you're building a system, for example, and you're asking people to subscribe to our newsletter, you have to put a disclaimer at the bottom. Hey, we are going to use, what are you using the information for? We are using your email address to send you weekly newsletters, which you can unsubscribe at any time. You have to give the users the choice of unsubscribing, and it cannot be a difficult process. You cannot have, you have to click here, then click there, then fill in this form, then click that. No, it has to be as easy as one click, and that's it. So just that rule alone has already determined part of your architecture. So when you're doing your emails, the link that you send to unsubscribe in the email should automatically unsubscribe that user. So all the information and everything. And here in Europe, you must give the user the ability to delete their account. And you cannot store that account in the database. You cannot put into, oh, it's now dormant. No, you can't even keep it dormant. You have to delete it. Okay, that's required by law. If you get audited by a government body and their information is still in your databases, even though it's dormant, you're in trouble. Okay, so that's law. That's just an example of law, and every region has its own laws, which is why, again, remember we asked the question just now, where are your users located? So if you have users in, let's say, the US, aha, now you have to conform to US laws as well, which means, and they might be conflicting laws, right? So then how do you handle that? Then you have to have a separate logic for US users as well as European users. Uh-oh. Well, wouldn't that make my information, I mean, my app a little bit more complex? Yes, but you can have, like, for example, yes, it's still the same API, but based on the location, you can have the API execute, okay, this is for the US login service, or this is a US sign up service, and this is for the European sign up service, right? So you can actually you can actually segregate your code that way. This is why I said it's so important. And Paavo alluded to this just now. Your design phase is so important. Your coding, relatively easy to do once you know what you need to do. But your design has to be spot on. Otherwise, you're going to be going, we didn't think about this before. Yeah? Okay. Now, the other part, that's law. Now there's ethics. Ethics are, nobody's going to give you, nobody's going to put you in handcuffs if you don't follow something. But it's generally, for example, I said just now, you cannot, you have to give users the control over their information. But if you have, like, for example, in the US, right? They always have a stipulation in their terms and agreements where they say a user can, what's the word for it? A user can, user information can and will be used by ourselves or our partners for marketing purposes. Now, just because of one clause in their agreement, you know what they can do now? They can take your information and sell it to their partners or third parties. It's legal. They can do that. You agreed to it when you signed up. But people tend to go, wait, how did McDonald's get my information? I didn't sign up for McDonald's newsletter. So people tend to raise an eyebrow anytime their information goes somewhere. So is it ethical to do that? I leave that entirely up to you. Okay, so and that's it, I guess. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention. At this point, I'd like to open up the floor. Oh, thank you. I'd like to open up the floor to any questions you might have. Go ahead and fire away. And you can ask me anything, even if it's not related to this.
Okay, well, this is that kind of question. Maybe you had very nice pictures in your presentation. Where are they from?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm a very big proponent of AIs. So all the pictures that you saw just now are actually from Midjourney. These are all images that I have created using Midjourney. So all the information, all the images that you just saw are from Midjourney. I'm sorry, I should have asked first. Are all of you familiar with Midjourney?
Probably most.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I use Midjourney extensively. Like, there you go. You just generate images upon images, as you can see over here. So, like, you saw this image just now in my presentation. Where was it? It was right here in the beginning. This image. Well, that one was generated by here. Ta-da! Right there. Right? You also saw this image in my presentation, not this one. Okay. So I use it for a lot of things, like writing books. Go away. I use it for writing books, and as you can see over here, I sometimes create like coloring books for my children. So I basically, like, this is a stained glass coloring book that I was putting together. And this one is meant for adults because, yes, I also like to color stuff every once in a while. So I can generate images like this and essentially do colors. This is for a storybook. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
There's another question in the chat. Jerry is asking, how big of a concern is the GDPR for a junior developer? I'm assuming, and it's continuing, I'm assuming it is something that the architects have to wrestle with.
Yes, it is primarily. Sorry?
Yeah, just give your answer. I have a follow-up question on this.
Okay. Yes, the GDPR is a primary concern of the architect. So as you are a junior developer, no, you wouldn't have to deal too much about it. This is in the realm of the architect. But if you start thinking about it now, even as you're coding, sometimes you have to remember architects are also fallible. They're human. So even a junior developer, I mean, I've had people who just straight out of college just came up to me and said, hey, I noticed this over here, and here's the problem. What if we basically did this and you know, it's going to basically give this kind of result? Wouldn't that be a problem later on? And you go, oh yeah, oops, I didn't think about that. So yeah, it's definitely not an issue for a junior developer, but it is something that you should be thinking about every single time, every point along the way. And we had a follow-up question from someone.
Yes, regarding these GDPRs, in your role as while writing code or working in company or with business partners, what is the role of the developer in terms of breaches and violations of those codes? Because at least for my, I would say, experience and feel the small and medium-sized companies have really big problems on how to accomplish the compliance of GDPR, and they don't really understand I mean, at least what I could found that the compensation can be between 2 to 4% of the turnover, or maybe in millions of euros. So one question is, how big are those fines, and how about when you working in company and with data, what is the role of that?
Okay. That's those are supremely good questions. However, I am going to disappoint you. on the first question, because I do not know what the fines are like, but from what I understand, they're pretty serious. Especially, I mean, in the case of the companies I've worked for, like Microsoft and Mytech, those fines can go into the millions of euros. So certainly not small. And as for, what is the role of the developer when it comes to, how we deal with those GDPR issues, they're not going to just, from what I understand, they're not going to just fine you one shot and, not give you a chance to fix it. They will tell you if somebody reports a GDPR violation, most government bodies will basically give you a chance to fix it first, right? Assuming it's not gone too far, but they'll tell you to fix it first. And so you have a chance to actually fix the problem before you're in trouble. And somebody just put oh, there you go, 750,000 euros. Thank you for that.
Yeah, lucky shot.
So there you go. And as far as what is the developer supposed to do? Well, if the feature that's causing the problem was written by you, and this is why it's very important to, do documentation, put comments on all your methods, all your classes, because if they know who the author is, you would probably be able to fix it a lot faster than someone who just came in and has to decipher your code, right? So that's why documentation is so supremely useful.
Yeah, and I think also it's not only a matter of coding, but many of us might be working with companies who have smaller IT departments. Also, when we have to either fix their database or line of code, there could be also cases when he or she is the only sole responsible for data security, and this is basically the same idea that you would have a restaurant that serves food that is rotten all the time.
Yeah, very good point. Precisely.
So I'm not sure how much how much one can be liable. Of course, the documentation, like you mentioned, might be a really big role in that.
Yeah. Usually, as Pavel mentioned, again, the moment you have some practices in your design stage, like for example, if you make it a point that all your developers, you must have every method that you write or any method that you modify, if you have this internal rule where if you touch a line of code, you change the commenting on it, that already solves, I would say, about 80% of most issues. 80%, so it's quite large.
Then there is Luke.
Yeah, Luke, I was about to say.
Hi, Tiki. Hey, first of all, dude, the presentation was amazing. Again, some good points there. So thanks for that, first of all. What I want to ask, and I'm going to steer the conversation in a different direction, but you'll see where I'm going with this, is obviously you're a professional in the workplace. You're out there in the working world, yeah?
Yes.
You know the nature of the beast, right? So what I really want to tap into with your experience, yeah, or your knowledge in that world is compared to 5 years ago. Let's go back 5 years ago. You said 2018 there was a shortage of programmers, yeah, and that's true, yeah. Now let's skip forward 5 years, and we're seeing layoffs, we're seeing cuts, we're seeing different technology companies laying off, yeah, for whatever reason. Okay, now let's go into the market. We talk about oversaturation, yeah. So you might have a job listing, and there might be, who knows, 5 positions available, and you might have thousands of applicants, like thousands, dude. And that's called oversaturation. Is just compared to the job, you have a massive percentage, yeah. First of all, I want to ask a 2-part question. What's your thoughts on oversaturation? Second of all, as a new guy coming into the industry, wrapping up my studies, man, how do you deal with oversaturation in a job? Like, what piece of advice, just one liner, can you throw out there to say, man, here's how you deal with it, or what the hell do you do, Tiki?
First and foremost, I can tell you oversaturation is, and a lot of people are gonna disagree with me on this one. It's a myth. And let me explain why. If you go back a few hundred years ago, horses, there was a whole industry based around horses, horse carriages, horse wagons, wheels, the training of horses, stables. All the roads were basically catered to horses. Fast forward to the 1900s, horses no longer around. How many of you rode your horse to school today or back home? None. It's the same with tech. Now, back Pablo just told us he's rich. He's got a horse. I don't have a horse. But here's the thing. Even in tech, when I first started, I was basically specializing in embedded software. That means software that was written to be embedded into devices. So I was basically doing a lot of assembly language and C. Fast forward 10, 15 years later, nobody uses C. Well, hardly anybody uses C or assembly language anymore. Now we're using C#, .NET, Java, Node, and now with the advent of AI, people are now moving towards, they're looking for people with machine learning skills, people with, I don't know, analytics skills, right? Things like that. People, and even this is, I swear, I just saw this job posting. I forget where. It was on one of the U.S. websites, and the basically was a prompt engineer. I shit you not, pardon my French, sorry, but prompt engineer, someone who knows how to prompt an AI. And that may sound like anybody could do that. No, actually, if you prompt an AI with nonsense, it will give you nonsense, as I just showed you just now when I was showing you about the database design question just now. So yes, even though there's right now for a standard full stack developer, it's starting to become a little saturated, but adjust your skills a little bit. I had to do the same thing like 4 or 5 times already in my whole lifetime. Adjust your skills and you still become relevant and still in demand. If I wanted to, arguably, if I wanted to right now, I could get a job as a full stack developer with an employer, salary and all. I could. Depends on what the employer wants. So, fear not, Luke. All you need to do is just update your skills a little bit to adjust for the times. Like for right now, yes, you still need to know how to do coding and you still need to know how to architect the system. But in the future, in the very near future, there's going to be a third skill that you need to have. So if you want to become a developer, it's not just that you're just a coder and nothing else. You need to be an architect as well. And here's the kicker, AI. You need to know how to use an AI. Like the training management system, I just gave you, I just showed you bits of like the database example just now. Usually, if I was creating that training management system, it would have taken me the better part of 6 weeks to 6 to 9 weeks to develop that system. I did that whole thing, user management and the catalog, the training catalog, in 4 hours. 4 hours. So those are the skills that you will need in the future. And I have no doubt in my mind, you will start to see some really new roles coming up in the near future. Like I said, hardware embedded software was, in the past. 30 years ago, you would never see a job listing for web application developer. 30 years ago, they were like, what the devil is a web application developer? Now, everybody wants a web application developer. In the future, it's probably going to be AI whisperer or robot. I don't know. Sorry, did I answer your question, Luke?
Yeah, no, it was really good. There's some good, helpful advice there, man. So I really appreciate it.
Much obliged. Okay, who else would have questions for me? No? Okay. So fear not, you are not going into a saturated market. You still need to know the basics. So everything that you're learning right now, how to code, how the systems work, and all that good stuff, you still need that. Even if you had an AI, you still need to know how to code. That is non-negotiable, because the AI will always give you something that is the path of least resistance. You need to know how to read it and adjust for it. Okay?
One more question. Nasretullah is asking any advice on imposter syndrome and how to deal with it.
I'm so glad you asked that question. I have it all the time. It's like every time I walk into a company, it's like, are they going to find out I'm a fraud? And even though, when a company hires you, they won't hire you just, they won't hire you just, based on your word. They will test you first. They will ask you to do a coding exercise. They will test you on, hey, this is a situation. How would you resolve it? So you don't have to worry about, be feeling like you don't belong. So long as you're honest about what you have, like, okay, if I've never touched this system before, or I have very limited experience with this, but I'm a fast learner. Nobody's going to hold you to it. I mean, if you want to take me as an example, I've been doing this for over 30 years. That's over 3 decades. And I still feel like I'm really not that good. But according to my employers and my bosses, there's a reason why they haven't fired me after 2 months. I mean, that's usually the probation period. So they have a chance. Don't worry. They have a chance to fire you. Even here in Finland, they have 6 months to test you out. And if they wanted to get rid of your ass, they would get rid of your. Pardon, I'm going to start. I'm the son of a sailor, by the way, so I'm basically trying to watch my words, because I can cuss and swear the wallpapers off the walls. So yeah, if they wanted to fire you, they will have ample opportunity to fire you with very, very few legal ramifications. So you don't have to worry about imposter syndrome. That's what I have to tell myself. So yes, I understand what you're saying. I feel it all the time. But then I also have to remember, wait, they could have fired me within the first 6 months if I didn't perform to their expectations. Which is why, here's a tip. Here's something you can do when you get employed. Do this. I always do this with all my employers. I basically go up to them at the 1 month mark, the 3 month mark, and the 6 month mark, and I say, hey, you've already seen me for a month here. I would like you to tell me how I can improve. Always ask your whoever you're reporting to, how can I improve? I've done this already. Is there something else you would like to see me doing? And they will give you input as to how you can improve yourself and how you can better align with what they want you to do. And it does 2 things. That's one. Number 2 is they actually, in their head, they'll go, you're brilliant. Nobody's ever asked me this before. And I'm pretty sure not very few people have. At least that's the feedback I usually get.
That's very true. I want to also add something to this a question of imposter syndrome, because I've been doing now teaching for 4 years, and I have this problem also, and it comes to mind that maybe there's not much you can do about it for yourself, but I noticed that every now and then some student might say something, give very positive feedback, and that helps me, so maybe you can help somebody else with an imposter syndrome, and don't worry about yourself so much.
Yeah, and I I like Marcus's question right there. Yeah, and I'm gonna add something to it. I mean, Pavel has my contact information, my email, and also you have my LinkedIn profile over there. So if you would like, if you would like, I will offer this to you. If you ever have a question or anything I can help with, like even like stuff that's Tiki, I'm applying for a job. Can you take a look at my CV and see what I could improve on, kind of thing? By all means, shoot me a message. I will reply as quickly as I can. Okay.
Thanks, Tiki. I will stop the recording here.